quick to send text, we are quick to make calls, we are quick to do Google search. No matter how hopeless the situation is, God expects you to trust Him only and to talk to Him first. David suggests to us a life that is in strong relationship with God. He has enough reasons to just walk away. He had enough reasons to give up and gripe and complain. Chose the right way, which you and I can learn from today. You're welcome to another episode of Logos, where our hearts are transformed by the revelation of Christ. This is a walk through the Psalms, episode 12. In this episode, we'll be looking at Psalm 3, and we'll look at it under two sections. The first section is from verse 1 to 4, and the second is from verse 5 to 8. However, in this episode, we'll be looking at the first section. But before I read, we want to give a brief background to this psalm. Psalm 3 was written during David's one of the darkest moments in life. He was a man of war. He's a man who never lost a battle. And he has been a man of war long before he became a king. Remember how he killed Goliath. So he had a good track record of victories against his enemies. However, at this point in time, there was sword in his house as prophesied by Nathan. So the setting of Psalm 3 actually started way back when Amnon defied or violated his own half-sister, who happened to be the sister to Absalom. So Amnon is half-brother to Tamar. He violated Tamar, and in revenge, Absalom eventually killed Amnon. He killed his half-brother. So because of that, he went into exile, and after a while, he came back. But he did something weird when he came back. He would stand at the gate of the city where people lodge their complaints and they come for conflict resolution. So what Absalom was doing, he had a wrong agenda. He pretended to be sympathizing with people, and he was really patient about it. He would stand at the gate, listen to people's complaints, and he would tell them that if I were to be the judge or the king of this place, I will have given you the right judgment. He presented himself as someone that is sympathizing with people. And because he was consistent and was also mischievously patient about his intention, he was eventually able to win the heart of people. This story altogether can be found in 2 Samuel from chapter 13 to chapter 18. So while this was going on, Bible actually described the feat of Absalom as stealing the heart of the people. So eventually, through that mischievous means, Absalom was able to steal and win the heart of the people. So he strategized, got some men, and eventually he went ahead to declare himself as a king. He has set his men around the town, and they eventually shouted him as the king. That was an actual coup d'etat. He literally overthrew his father while his father was still reigning. So David had no choice than to run for his dear life. Many more things happened to David. You can see it in that portion in 2 Samuel from chapter 13 to chapter 18. So David ran for his life barefooted, weeping, hopeless. There is no hope for the future. So four things that happened significantly to David was that number one, he was betrayed by his own very blood, his son. Not only that, the son eventually began to gather more and more people. Even when David was on the run, he got a report that the conspiracy and the people who conspired against him, they were increasing in numbers. So the son was against David. Not only that, people were increasingly conspiring against him too. So the number of his enemies was increasing. Now, not only that, one of his counselors or one of his advisors, who he really relied on, by the name Ahithophel, eventually joined Absalom. to stand against David. And not only that, he was literally mocked. And they told him God is actually punishing him because of that. A man, Shimei, actually looked him in the face and while he was running away and told him, no, you are receiving the consequence of your action. God has forsaken you and all of that. So it was a very difficult moment for David. Two things we can see in this situation and this experience of David, first of all, was that David is persecuted, and it's not just persecution now, but it's actually a life-threatening circumstance. He is not assured of the future. His life is under threat. He actually had to run barefooted, weeping, and many things were happening along the line at the same time, increasing number of enemies and people he has relied on. So it's not just a case of loyalty, it's a life-threatening situation, which actually also showed that as a king, visibly and physically, the glory seemed to have departed from his life. So you will see why eventually he had to call God his glory. Now let's just read the first section as I said earlier. Psalm 3 from verse 1 to 4. Lord, how they have increased, who trouble me. Many are those who rise up against me. Many are they who say of me, there is no help for him in God. But you, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory and the one who lifts up my head. I cried to the Lord with my voice, and he heard me from his holy hill. So, looking at verse 1 to 4, we already have a background. I've already explained briefly how that the life of David is under threat. So, it's a situation of hopelessness and helplessness. There is nowhere to run to. There is nobody to help. Even those whom he have ruled over eventually turn back and begin to mock him. When someone speaks in such a derogatory way to a king, you know that things have really gone bad. Okay? And so, in pouring his mind to God, I thought that at this point in time, God should be the last person you want to talk to, because he will have felt that with all the promises God gave him, is this what should happen to him eventually. Now, this is a man who God referred to as a man after his own heart, a great king, with all the promises that is attached to him, that is given to him and is attached to his kingdom. Yet, he got to this point of persecution, life-threatening situation, and a serious humiliation. That's the situation with David in this case. And nothing can be more hopeless than that. A man was literally dethroned in violence by his own child. Yet, you will see from verse 1 that the Lord was the one he eventually turned to, even when things were bad. Okay, now let's read verse 1 again. Lord, how they have increased who trouble me. Many are those who rise up against me. Now, David is not here just writing empty poems. If you check that record very well, of when David was dethroned by his child, by Absalom particularly, and if you check that story very well, you will see that literally they were increasing in numbers. There was an actual increase of enemy, because Absalom began to gather more and more people to himself in a bid to just establish his reign over the land of Israel. Okay, so David was literally recounting to the Lord what he is going through. Now, another thing I want to emphasize in verse 1 is that in Hebrew poetry, order of things matter. The order in which you say things actually matter. In Jewish style of poetry, the important things are said first or are mentioned first many times. And this psalm is not an exception. Now here, what is most important to David here is God. And so he mentioned God first. Look at what he said. He said, Lord, how they have increased who trouble me. Many are those who rise up against me. When things are bad, when things seem helpless, when things seem hopeless, when there is no way to turn to, I tell you the truth, God still remains the only one that can help us out. in difficult situations. And so we must cultivate the habit of talking to God about everything. As humans, we seem to be ruled by our senses to a point where we begin to see men as the first resort when there are circumstances beyond our control. So we are quick to send text, we are quick to make calls, we are quick to uh, do Google search. You have a health condition, for instance, you are quick to go search about the condition online and all of that. That is not a Christian life God has called us to. No matter how hopeless the situation is, no matter how difficult the situation is, God expects you to trust Him only and to talk to Him first. And so this should be the last time you should be praying, because He has His heart in His mouth at this time. Yet He called upon God and He poured His heart to God. So prayer actually allows us the avenue to express how we feel to God. Yes, because He's our Father, so there is no regimen about this is what you should start with and this is how you should do it. No, that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is that God is always there with a listening ear to listen to us. He has a concern. He has a life-threatening situation at hand. And instead of just yielding to fear, instead of just yielding to the pressure on the outside, at this point, he literally looked away from this circumstance and he put his attention on God and he began to talk to God about it. This is what actually gave birth to Psalm 3. Now let's look at verse 2. Many are those who say of me, there is no help for him in God. Now I just gave you an example of Shimei, who literally looked at David and mocked him. And you will see that in, I believe, 2 Samuel chapter 16. The man Shimei, Shimei, actually mocked David and spoke evil of him. So I'm saying that while this is a poetic presentation, it doesn't mean it's just using empty words. In this psalm, David was literally recounting what he was going through. And Bible says, be careful for nothing. And that is exactly what David is doing here. David's life and his relationship with God actually prefigures what the Christian life looks like under Christ in the New Testament, or with Christ in the New Testament. Now, the same way God wants us to pour our heart, not complain, not murmur, not grumble or gripe. No, the way He wants us to literally express our minds to Him in trust and faith, the same thing is what David is doing here. Bible says in Philippians 4, be careful for nothing, but in everything with prayer and supplication, let your request be made known to God. And I'm saying again, no matter how difficult the situation is, no matter how hard and hopeless and helpless the situation is, I tell you the truth, you must never turn your back against God. God still expects you to talk to Him about the situation. Yes, He wants you to talk to Him. That's what David did here. He said, many are those who say of me, there is no help for him in God. Now, let me say this to you. You must have had people talk about, stick and steel can break my bone, but what cannot break me? Now, but the truth of the matter is that there is power in the words of humans, including your word. Now, if care is not taken, what people say to you can literally destroy your life. And we have to be careful about what we pay attention to. Now, what they said to him in mockery was enough for him to just give up and say, well, indeed, I am forsaken of God. Because if God is with me, like Gideon said, if God indeed is with me, this should not be happening to me. And so you shouldn't allow what people say, no matter how logical and believable it is, you must never allow the words of men to determine the course of your life. Because eventually, what happens to you is will require your agreement and permission. And so many times when people say wrong things to us, we are quick to unconsciously agree with what they say because of what the eyes can see. Now, everything around David at this point in time, everybody's turning his back against him. Now, so from a casual looker and someone who is ruled by his senses, everything around David at that point in time might be suggestive of someone who is forsaken by God. Yes. But anyone that is going to be walking with God must learn to see beyond what meets the eye. And so because of that, you do not allow the words of human beings to have the final authority over your life. So it's your decision to decide who will have the final say in my life. Not circumstance, not human beings, not police report, not doctor's report. People can say what they believe simply by what their eyes, their ears are telling them. But as believers, we are not moved by what we hear from humans. We are not moved by what we see. We are not moved by what people say. They can call themselves counselors and call themselves intelligent people who have long years of experience in analyzing human condition. Yeah, and that's okay. They could be professionals in their own right, which is fine. However, for believers, we have a higher authority over our lives. We have an authority that is higher than all authority over our lives. And that is who God is in our lives. So this is what they have said. But, one of the things you should counter this with, if you are faced with similar situation as this, one of the ways you can counter this is to always remind yourself again that, okay, that is what you have said. That is your own estimation of this circumstance. But what has God said? What is God saying? And so at the end of the day, whichever course your life goes will be determined by which one you agree with. Do you want to agree with the one that is physically obvious, which is confirmed by human beings, or you want to agree with what God is saying, even though it's not readily obvious? Be careful what people say to you. Be careful what you constantly pay attention to, because eventually it will form a rigid pattern through which your life will go. And so you have to be careful about that. So many are they who say of me. I've given an example of Shimei, but I can see from David's expression that is more than just that one man. All right. But it says again, many are they who say of me, there is no help for him in God. Verse 3 says, but you, O Lord, thank God for such interjection. In spite of what men have said, in spite of the hopelessness and the helplessness. He said, but you, O Lord. So, David suggests to us a life that is in strong relationship with God. He has enough reasons to just look away. He had enough reasons to give up and gripe and complain. That even did God was with me. Then why are all of these things happening to me? Where was God when they were strategizing to overthrow me? Where was God? God saw them when they were doing all this. Where was God when they were trying to kill me? Where was God when they were mocking me? And all of these things could have been going on in his mind. But he chose the right way, which you and I can learn from today. In spite of what people are saying, in spite of the mockery, in spite of the threat to his life, he still looked up to God and he said, but you, O Lord, are a shield for me. And so in case you're listening to me and you had some bad things people say behind your back, I say to you once again, remember that they are humans. They are not God. Is that what God is saying about you? And so don't let that bother you. Just let it be. Many times when we hear bad reports about ourselves, especially what people who are close to us have said, if care is not taken, by dwelling on those wrong testimonies, which are not even true, because no matter how intelligent and how well presented those informations are, it is still from human perspective. Because God will never condemn any man. Okay? And so if we dwell on those words long enough, they will begin to shape the way you see yourself. They will begin to shape the patterns of your life. And if you dwell on them long enough, they will eventually become rich patterns. So we must get to a point as believers who are meditating on God's word and who are walking daily with God in close relationship, We must get to that point when we can literally say, I don't care about what you say about me. What matters the most is what God says about me. Even when you deserve to be scolded and people begin to trample you down, God will still not condemn you. So even if you think that is an insult you deserve, you should not still allow that to shape how you view yourself, because there is a way God views you. Even in your pitfalls and your mistakes and your weaknesses, God still sees you with the eye of Jesus. He still sees you in union with Jesus. All right, now let's make progress. But you, O Lord, are a shield for me. Now, this is protection. The word shield here talks of a covering that is used to protect a soldier in the time of war. So he didn't say you give me a shield. He said God himself. That is a sense of someone who has a strong relationship with God. So he is still conscious of his relationship with God. He is still conscious of who God is to him, even in the midst of his calamity. We have a lot to learn from David. You know, that consciousness of the presence of God, that consciousness of the person of God, that pushed him to a point where he could literally talk to God as a friend would talk to his friend, even in the midst of challenges. Look at the way David was talking to God that he cannot see. He was using you, almost like he was looking at God face to face, and he was talking to God like that. You are my shield. And so he has that sense of a God who is near, even in the midst of fire. He never lost the consciousness of God's presence. And so what makes a man actually walk in this kind of consciousness is attention. What are you giving attention to when things are bad? You can still have the overwhelming consciousness of God's presence even when things turn south, even when things go the wrong way. You must never do that, because at the end of the day, that will be your weapon, that will be your covering, that will be your help. Your help is found in your ability to consistently maintain focus on God and maintain that consciousness of his presence, even when it appears he's not there. Okay, and he said, my glory, the one who lift up my head. He actually needs that lifting up of head at this point in time, because he's almost like he's at the brink of death. But he's still conscious of all this truth. Now, as a king, momentarily, at this point in time in this situation, he has lost the glory of a king. Because if you check that account very well, he was literally running barefooted, weeping as he went. Not only that, mockery with words was actually trailing him also. So people turned their back against him and they were mocking him. And so in spite of the fact that he has visibly lost at that point the glory of a king, he still sees God as his glory. And so I'm saying to you that our source of confidence, our source of assurance is not in what can be seen. Houses, possessions, properties, and achievements, they cannot match the glory that Jesus is to us. The Spirit of glory rests and abides in us. And so we are glorified by the grace of Jesus, not by what we can do or what we have. And so in spite of this hard circumstance, David still sees God as his glory, even though physically and visibly he seemed to have been stripped of the glory of the rightful king. All right, now look at verse 4. I cried to the Lord with my voice, and he heard me from his holy hill. Now, from verse 1 to verse 4, one of the things we're going to see as a summary of David's expression is the heart of a man who has strong confidence in God. Now, the time of challenges is not a time to compromise. The time of challenges is a time to actually get closer to God, because God answers prayer. David is reminding us again here. He says, I cried to the Lord with my voice, and the Lord heard me from his holy hill. And so I say to you, if he had David under the old covenant, he will hear you too. Yes, don't pray in unbelief. Don't pray with double mind. Seek the Lord. What that present challenge is not beyond what God can do. There is nothing God cannot do. For with God, all things are possible. If you will make up your mind, and many times the leaky point and the point of sabotage is found in us having double minds and having alternative. So we are praying, but many times we are praying with double minds while we're still trying to strategize with alternatives. Now, that is not how it works. You must see God as your only source and your only help. It will send men to you, it will send resources to you, but it doesn't start from there. It's all about God here. And if you will pray sincerely, just like Jesus said, most assuredly I say to you, if you ask anything in my name, I will do it. And you can take that to the bank because Jesus is dependable. God is trustworthy. If you will pray in faith, not doubting, not looking sideways, not thinking back and forth whether it's going to listen to you or not, I tell you the truth, in the midst of challenges, God will show up. He will answer your prayer like he answered David. I'm going to continue in the next episode looking at the second section from verse 5 to 8, trying to study and see what we can learn from the experience of David and how he has confidence and assurance in the ability of God to deliver. We're going to look at that in the next episode. Until that time, I commend you to God and the word of his grace. Amen.